Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I wanted to do a response video to Jason's very interesting videos on Skyfall, where he talks about the fact that after a long time of being an old school gamer like myself, he's understanding some of the reservations people have about playing it. And he said he's done most of his, or had most of experience as a game master, and so he's having more experiences as a player, and he can see where some of the concerns that people have lie. And I thought that was actually a really interesting and cool video. And of course, I was not entirely surprised because, he and I had been discussing things along with a few other people. So I was a little surprised, but not entirely. And I think, probably his praise of me is maybe a little misplaced. I guess I'm all right as a game master. But it is really, it's a subject I've talked about. It's a subject that we, as part of this group, have been talking about an awful lot, like various facets of that, or things that relate to that subject. There's a lot of things I want to, post videos on about this, and on this channel. Post videos about on this channel. But I don't want to go off there like half-baked. Like, I want to have some more discussions with these people because I've had a lot of fun doing that. Because, otherwise it's just an echo chamber for me talking about what I think. However, it's funny, as Jason was talking about, like, knowing your chances and not being able to know your chances, that's stuff I talked about in the very first YouTube video I ever made. Which, if you can go back and find it, I think it's a response to Tetsubo 57. About old school versus modern games, and if you can sit through that awful 15-minute video, you can find where I talk about this. And I think I go back later on, and probably wearing another tie-dye shirt, talk about just that little part of it about knowing your chances and how you can do that in various ways using various mechanics, which Jason talked about. Because that's a common thing for game masters of some of those simple systems to pull out one of the tools out of the toolbox. And say, okay, well, I'm going to use a 2d6 roll here. I'm going to have you roll d20 under an ability score, or I'll have you roll percentile dice. These are the same examples I gave in that video years ago that Jason was talking about. How, in the game master's chair, that it seems more reasonable, or what's going on, and sometimes I think part of it is the communication to the player, because as a player, sometimes you're not sure what's going on at all. And so this isn't a rebuttal video at all, but this is an interesting part of like the competency discussion, and a lot of discussions about rule set size and why you prefer different rule set size, why you prefer different rule sets in general, etc. But I'm going to go back to like what I think I talked about way back then, and what I have talked about since, or what I've had reinforced, I would say. I had other people bring up the same thing. Independently, because there's no real new ideas under the sun. I'm not that smart. Sometimes we just discover the same things. But I believe there's probably, for lack of a better number, there's probably 5 different levels of you being able to estimate your success, both in real life and as a character. At least this is going to be Ivan's theory. And so those are going to be pretty much no problem. It's possible you could fail, but generally this is a sure thing. Second thing was, I'm probably can make this. Really good chance of making this. I'm competent. Could go wrong, but I don't think so. 50-50 would be number 3. Number 4 would be this is hard. I might be able to do this, but this is hard. And number 5 would be no frickin' way. Hail Mary attempt, yes. And I suppose you can make an argument for like there being one on either end of those extremes. Just absolutely flat. There's no way the character can ever do this, or flat. There's no way you can possibly miss. Although, I've mistied my shoes and tripped over my own feet, so I don't think those parts of the scale actually exist. So, part of the, thing I think that you have to do as a game master in one of those simple games is to let the players know. Let that character know, but let the player know through their character, through like however you describe the scene. And sometimes I think as a player you kind of need to ask, and this could be in character or out of character, kind of this, part of this whole narrative, or this, back and forth discussion between, game master and player. You talk about like how difficult this looks to the character, because I've talked about in other videos, you should be able to ballpark your chances as you go through life. Most things, I can kind of size up and know in which one of those 5 categories this attempt that I might want to make, or this thing I might want to try to do would lie. I try to climb over a fence. Okay, well, it depends how high is the fence. Okay, sometimes Ivan's not getting over it. Ivan needs to lose some weight and go to the gym more. But it's it's something that we've talked to various people in this group, and so one of these guys, Brian, was talking about this knowledge of competence is a really important thing, and he was talking about it. Well, he was bringing Ubiquity as a game that informs you of this quite a bit, because in there it lets you know like what the difficulty of something is. There are literally difficulty numbers, but more importantly, it does a great job of letting you know not only how hard is something, right, but it lets you know how hard is it for you, So it's not just that this particular task, whatever it is, get over this fence, has some kind of global number of this is a 2 difficulty or a 3 difficulty. You're also able to look at it based on your character's abilities and know whether you can do that. And in that particular game, it's expressed by the averages. So if you have a 4-die pool in something, or 8-die pool in something rather, you know that on average you can do things which have a difficulty of 4, which I believe might be hard. I forget what the numbers are, or what the actual words are. But for you, it's just about a sure thing. It kind of resides in that no problem range. Not quite sure thing. Depending on if the game master makes you roll, then it's all of a sudden it's 65 something % chance. Still pretty darn good, but it's no longer like a hand wave sort of thing. That is something that Ubiquity does really, really well. We've talked about that, and actually, it's funny as we were talking about this concept. Brian was bringing up the idea of like playing a game of something like Ubiquity using only the averages, and you can do this with other games too. I mean, that's just a very easy game to do it with, and I think the more I look at that system, the more I play it, the more I really, really like it, because you're able to focus in really, really tightly to get really granular with like each little attempt to do something, or you're able to pull way, way back and use things like the serious situations and rules, and kind of treat the party and their opposition, and no matter what they're doing, it doesn't not just combat, but a chase or whatever. You're both trying to research something, and you can treat them as one big giant mega character, and the various abilities or strengths and weaknesses of the various people involved don't get ignored. But anyhow, that's a side tangent. But getting back there, it's funny because you could play the entire game. He's saying using just the averages, what would that look like? And I am the guy in this discussion, as we're having this discussion, who's on the other side saying, no, you can't do that. You can't do that, because I like this chance of long shot failure, long shot success. But we're having I'm making it myself out to be more of an alarmist than I am. Maybe not. Maybe if you talk to Brian, he would say, oh yeah, he's freaking out, dude. But you can literally play most of any game just based on knowing who your character is. It's very easy in a game like Ubiquity, and this is why Brian, Jason rather is talking about like here, much easier contract to sign, because you can look at your character sheet, you can look at your skills, right off the bat. You look at a particular task, how difficult it is this for me. Whereas in this game, it is up to what does the game master say, because a lot of times it's not in the rule set, and so you're at the mercy of the game master deciding what it is. Are they going to share this information with you, or are they not going to share this information with you? I believe, and maybe this is why I'm a good game master in Jason's estimation, I will share this with you as to the best of my ability. That I will share you like what your chances are, so it ends up looking a lot more like this. Part of the what Ubiquity has done is that it's taken you, it's allowed you to use a more complicated rule set, break things down very granular, but it's allowed you to use old school sensibilities, which is one of the reasons that it's very cool. So that's my shill for Ubiquity at this particular point. But yeah, you got to be able to it helps to be able to like know what your chances are, because then you can make informed decisions, I think is where we were getting at with that. But it's possible to play that entire game, Ubiquity, or even an old school game, where you just kind of look at, well, how competent is this character? He's a third level fighter. He's got an 18 strength. He's got an 8 wisdom. And you kind of know how well these characters would do in various situations. So a lot of times you do not need to roll dice, because it's obvious what would happen. And of course, what I quipped back to Brian, Brian G, was the idea that it's kind of like playing Stratego without bombs and without spies. If you're not old enough to have played Stratego, the idea is if you hit a bomb, unless you're a miner, you blow up, you die. And otherwise, if you're a spy, you can actually take out everybody, including the field marshal. But or you can take out the field marshal. I believe just about everybody else can kill you, but the spy is really good at doing that one thing. He might be able to kill the number 9 guys. The idea, though, in Stratego is that the lower your number is when two pieces hit each other, because you can't see which ones they are, always the lowest number wins. So hence the idea of just playing just with the averages, or just with whatever your competencies are in whatever game it is, would be a little like playing Stratego with absolutely no surprises. There's no bombs. There's no mine. There's no spies. You always know, whether you're going to succeed or fail. So, anyhow, that's a side tangent thing. But and we also talked in that group. Now that I'm making this video really crazy, we talked about things like preferences for smaller rule sets, and we're talking a little bit about preferences for larger rule sets. But why? Because I believe there are various reasons for why you would prefer smaller rule sets and larger rule sets, and the motivations for the people that like one or the other aren't always the same. And part of it is the idea that you can, say like in a small rule set, one of the reasons I like it is I can size up right away what a competency is, what the chances for success are, in which one of those 5 categories, five fingers, 5 categories, I should be able to put this sort of attempt, and then be able to translate that to the player. Hey, this is hard, but it's easy for you. So, anyhow, I just kind of wanted to give a hats off to Jason, because that is a very, very important topic, and that is one of those reasons. Let's see, now I got to get the books again. Now that I put them down, where a game like this will give you a much more consistent experience, regardless of who you're playing with, more or less, than a game like this. The rules can't protect you from everything. However, this game does it a little bit better. It's codified more things, so I understand where he was coming from. So I want to continue that discussion, because I believe it's actually, I don't want to say open up a whole can of worms. That's not the right saying, but certainly there's more than meets the eye, and that topic can lead to a lot of other topics, which is part of what I find interesting, and especially more interesting now that I'm involved again in playing more often, because I see these things crop up, and so that's really cool. So once again, probably went longer than it should have, but that's me. So you're used to this by now.